She stayed silent for years, but now, at 73, Princess Anne has finally revealed the one person she disliked more than anyone. She has always been known for speaking her mind and not playing into royal drama, but behind closed doors, she held a deep resentment. And now, after all this time, she's finally telling the world who it was. From the moment she was born in 1950, Princess Anne was different. She was part of one of the most powerful families in history, but she never cared about fame or attention. Her older brother, Charles, was meant to be king, while she was expected to follow royal rules without question. But Anne wasn't like the others. She was strong, independent, and always focused on her work. Even as a child, she had no patience for silly traditions or fancy titles. While other royals enjoyed being in the spotlight, Anne stayed away from the cameras. She didn't care about impressing the public or making headlines. Instead, she worked hard to earn respect. For her, being royal wasn't about wearing fancy clothes or smiling for photos, it was about doing real work. And she made sure people knew that. She took her royal duties seriously from a young age. At just 18, she started working with charities and representing the royal family at events. While Charles often struggled with his role, Anne knew exactly what she had to do. She became one of the hardest working royals, completing more official duties in a year than anyone else. She never used her title as an excuse to avoid work. Anne had no patience for drama. She didn't believe in pretending or being overly polite just to keep the peace. She was known for speaking the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. Some thought she was rude, while others admired her honesty. But one thing was clear: Anne didn't care what others thought of her. Her only goal was to do her job and do it well. Unlike others in the royal family, Anne didn't worry about what people said about her. She didn't follow fashion trends or let the media control her image. While other royal women were judged for what they wore, Anne ignored it. She once said that what a person does is more important than how they look. This attitude made her one of the most respected royals. Even though many people admired her, she was not always well liked inside the palace. She had no patience for those who used their royal titles for personal gain. She believed scandals didn't just embarrass the royal family, they damaged its reputation. She refused to accept that being royal meant avoiding consequences, and when family members acted out, Anne didn't stay quiet. She made sure they knew exactly how she felt. Anne followed the rules, but not everyone in the royal family did, and she made sure they knew exactly how she felt. Princess Anne has always been known for her strong work ethic and no-nonsense attitude. While the royal family has been rocked by scandals for years, she never took part in any of them. She followed the rules, stayed out of trouble, and focused on her duties. But that didn't mean she ignored the chaos around her. She watched as some family members made mistake after mistake, bringing shame to the monarchy, and while she rarely spoke about it, her cold stares said everything. Anne's loyalty was to the Queen and the monarchy above all else. While others in the royal family made decisions that hurt their reputation, she remained steady. She believed that being royal wasn't about fame or fun, it was about responsibility. Every public mistake from a family member made the royal family look weak, and Anne had no patience for it. She despised those who embarrassed the monarchy, especially when their actions caused scandals that took over the news. One of the biggest royal scandals involved her younger brother, Prince Andrew. Once seen as a respected figure, his reputation was destroyed when serious accusations were made against him. As the news spread, the royal family faced major backlash. Anne, who had always worked hard to protect the family's image, was furious. She believed that being royal came with rules, and Andrew had broken them in the worst way. She didn't defend him. She didn't make excuses for him. Instead, she quietly distanced herself, showing the world that she didn't support his actions. But Andrew wasn't the only one who made headlines. There was also the long, messy story of King Charles and Camilla. When Charles married Diana, the world saw them as a perfect couple. But behind the scenes, Charles had feelings for someone else, Camilla. Their secret relationship went on for years, even while Charles was married. The truth finally came out, and it became one of the biggest royal scandals of all time. Anne, who had always been strict about duty and loyalty, was deeply disappointed. She believed that Charles had put personal feelings above his responsibilities as a future king. To her, that was unacceptable. Even though Charles eventually married Camilla, Anne's feelings didn't change overnight. She never showed the same warmth to Camilla that she did to other royal family members. For years, their interactions were cold and distant. Some say Anne eventually forgave Charles, but others believe she never fully accepted how he handled his role as the future king. Anne always stayed true to the rules of royalty. She believed in hard work, loyalty, and respect for the crown. While others in the family got caught up in scandals, she never did. She watched as some of them made mistake after mistake, shaking her head in disappointment. But these weren't the figures who truly angered her. That title belonged to someone who shattered the royal code like no one else had before. From the moment Meghan Markle stepped into the royal family, Princess Anne had doubts. While the world saw Meghan as a breath of fresh air, Anne saw something else. Someone who didn't understand what it truly meant to be royal. She had spent her entire life following the rules, keeping her head down and putting duty above personal desires. But Meghan? She was different. Anne saw it right away. She saw through her charm, her polished words, and her Hollywood-trained smile. To Anne, Meghan wasn't fit for royal life. Anne believed that being a royal wasn't about attention, it was about responsibility. Meghan, on the other hand, came from a world where attention was everything. She was used to the cameras, the headlines, and the spotlight. But to Anne, the royal family wasn't a stage, and it wasn't a performance. Meghan's way of carrying herself, her modern views, and her desire to change the system made Anne uneasy. While Meghan wanted to modernize the monarchy, Anne believed in protecting its traditions. One of the biggest clashes between Meghan and Anne was their completely different upbringings. Meghan grew up in America, where success often comes from speaking up, making an impact, and standing out. But the royal family was built on the opposite idea: blending in, staying quiet, and following the rules. Meghan wanted to be a new kind of royal, one that didn't just follow traditions, but challenged them. Anne, however, had spent decades proving that duty came before everything, including personal happiness. Anne wasn't surprised when Meghan struggled with royal expectations. She knew it would happen. She had seen it before. Outsiders who married into the family thinking they could handle it, only to realize they couldn't. Meghan was no exception. From the start, Anne predicted that Meghan wouldn't last. She wasn't built for a life of rules, obligations, and constant public scrutiny. While some in the royal family welcomed Meghan with open arms, Anne kept her distance. She never bought into the excitement. She knew that sooner or later, Meghan would walk away. When Meghan and Prince Harry announced their decision to leave royal life, Anne was anything but shocked. She had seen it coming. To her, Meghan's exit, often called Megxit, wasn't a tragic loss. It was proof of what she had known all along. When asked about the situation, Anne made her feelings clear. "This is a job, not a performance," she reportedly said. That single sentence summed up everything she believed. Meghan had treated royal life like a role to be played, not a duty to be honored. Even after Meghan and Harry moved to the US and built a new life, Anne never changed her stance. She wasn't one to sugarcoat her opinions, and she wasn't about to start now. She had no patience for drama, no tolerance for those who abandoned their responsibilities, and no sympathy for those who claimed they didn't know what they were signing up for. But Meghan wasn't the only one Anne despised. There was another princess who got under Anne's skin even more. Princess Diana was adored by the public, a royal icon who could do no wrong in the eyes of the media. But not everyone in the royal family shared that admiration, especially Princess Anne. While the world saw Diana as the people's princess, Anne saw something very different. She saw a woman who craved attention, who played to the cameras, and who built her image through carefully crafted moments. To Anne, being royal wasn't about winning public approval. It was about duty, hard work, and staying out of the spotlight. Anne had always been a firm believer that emotions had no place in royal life. Royals weren't supposed to seek sympathy or share their struggles with the world, but Diana did just that. She wore her heart on her sleeve, speaking openly about her pain, her struggles, and the problems within her marriage. To the public, it made her relatable. To Anne, it made her weak. She saw Diana as too emotional, too fragile, and too dependent on what others thought of her. The tension between them wasn't just private, it played out in subtle, public moments. One of the most famous examples came when Diana gave birth to Prince William. Reporters rushed to get Anne's reaction to the news, expecting warmth, excitement, or at least a polite statement. Instead, Anne responded with a simple, dismissive, "Oh, good." The comment was brief, almost uninterested, and it didn't take long for the press to pick up on the coldness behind it. It was clear Anne wasn't moved by Diana's growing influence in the royal family. Anne didn't just dislike Diana's emotional nature. She saw her as a threat. Diana knew how to use the media to her advantage. She could turn every event, every appearance, into a moment that captured the public's heart. She was photographed hugging sick children, comforting grieving families, and fighting for social causes in ways that made headlines. While Anne had been doing charity work for years, she never sought recognition for it. Now, with Diana in the picture, Anne's efforts were being overshadowed. Suddenly, Diana was the royal everyone wanted to see, and Anne was left in the background. But as much as Anne resented Diana's approach, she never expected the tragedy that would come next. When Diana died in a car crash in 1997, the entire world mourned. The outpouring of grief was unlike anything the royal family had seen before. For Anne, it was a complicated moment. She had spent years viewing Diana as someone who had changed the monarchy in all the wrong ways, but now, in death, she had become larger than life. The rivalry they once had no longer mattered. Anna's battle with Diana was well known, but she clashed with more than just the people's princess. She had an issue with another woman who shook up the royal family in unexpected ways. Sarah Ferguson, known as Fergie, was full of energy and always ready to have fun. She was the opposite of Princess Anne in almost every way. Where Anne was serious and focused, Fergie was playful and carefree. She laughed loudly, enjoyed the spotlight, and wasn't afraid to show her personality in public. But to Anne, that wasn't how a royal should behave. She believed Fergie was reckless, embarrassing, and a risk to the royal family's reputation. Anne had always followed the rules and she expected others to do the same. Fergie, however, didn't seem to care about royal traditions. She was different from the start, bringing a casual and modern style into the family. She loved being in front of the cameras and made headlines for her outgoing nature. While some people found her charming, Anne found her frustrating. She saw Fergie as someone who didn't take royal life seriously enough. Things only got worse when Fergie became involved in scandals. The biggest one happened in 1992 when photos surfaced of her on vacation with an American businessman, John Bryan. The pictures were shocking. Fergie was caught in a private moment having her toes kissed by Bryan while she lounged in the sun. The scandal humiliated the royal family, and Anne was furious. To her, this was the kind of reckless behavior that made the monarchy look bad. While Fergie tried to explain the situation, the damage was already done. But this wasn't the only scandal Fergie was involved in. She also faced major financial troubles, struggling with debt and making poor money decisions. Unlike Anne, who had always lived within her means, Fergie seemed careless with finances. She took business deals that raised eyebrows, accepted money from questionable sources, and often found herself in the middle of controversies. Anne saw this as another reason why Fergie couldn't be trusted. Anne never openly attacked Fergie, but she made her feelings clear in other ways. She quietly distanced herself, refusing to get close to Fergie or include her in royal events. Even after Fergie and Prince Andrew divorced, Anne still kept her at arm's length. Unlike Diana, who had a strong presence even after her split from Charles, Fergie was slowly pushed out of royal circles. Anne never gave Fergie a second chance. She believed that being royal came with responsibilities, and Fergie had failed to meet them. While some family members stayed friendly with Fergie, Anne remained distant. To her, Fergie had brought too much embarrassment to ever be fully accepted again. But Anne wasn't just at odds with royal women. She had icy encounters outside the monarchy too. Princess Anne has always been known for her strong opinions and no-nonsense attitude. She doesn't pretend to like people just because they're important. If she disapproves of someone, it shows. Two people who felt her cold attitude firsthand were Cherie Blair, the wife of former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and former US President Donald Trump. These encounters weren't just awkward, they showed exactly how Anne felt about those who didn't fit her standards. Cherie Blair was outspoken and modern and had little interest in royal traditions. Unlike most political spouses, she didn't follow royal etiquette and wasn't afraid to question the monarchy. Anne, on the other hand, believed in keeping the tradition alive. So when the two met, it didn't take long for tension to appear. The most famous moment happened at Balmoral, the royal family's Scottish estate. During a visit, Cherie casually asked Anne to call her by her first name instead of Mrs. Blair. Anne's response was immediate and sharp. She simply said, "I'd rather not." It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes. Anne had no interest in being friendly or informal with someone she didn't respect. Cherie, embarrassed and annoyed, later wrote about the moment, making it clear that she hadn't forgotten Anne's icy response. Then there was Donald Trump. When Trump visited Buckingham Palace for the NATO summit in 2019, Anne made headlines, not for what she said, but for what she didn't say. During the official greeting line, Queen Elizabeth welcomed world leaders including Trump. Anne stood nearby but didn't step forward to greet him. Instead, she shrugged and smiled as if to say, "It's just me." The moment was caught on camera and the media quickly turned it into a scandal. Some claimed that Anne had snubbed Trump on purpose, refusing to meet him out of personal dislike. Others said she had simply been following protocol, as she wasn't required to greet every guest. Whatever the truth was, Anne never explained herself. She ignored the speculation, just as she always did when it came to rumors about her opinions. Anne doesn't go out of her way to start conflicts, but when she disapproves of someone, she makes it obvious. She isn't one to fake a smile or act polite just because someone holds power. And while her run-ins with Cherie Blair and Donald Trump were uncomfortable, they were nothing compared to the tension she had with one woman in particular. But even these feuds didn't compare to the woman Anne despised most, a woman who changed the course of royal history. Long before Camilla Parker Bowles became part of the royal family, Princess Anne had already decided she didn't like her. Their history was complicated and their connection went beyond family ties. Before Camilla married Charles, she was with Andrew Parker Bowles, a man who had also been romantically involved with Anne. It was a messy web of relationships, and Anne had been right in the middle of it. Anne had once been close to Andrew Parker Bowles. They shared a strong connection, but because he was a Catholic, their relationship was never going to lead to marriage. Instead, Andrew moved on, and the woman he ended up with was none other than Camilla. While Anne never showed any public bitterness, those who knew her believed she had always held a quiet resentment toward Camilla. But Anne's issues with Camilla weren't just about Andrew. Even before Diana entered the picture, Anne saw Camilla as a problem. She knew about Camilla's close relationship with Charles, and she saw how it could damage the royal family. While Diana was still young and unaware of what was happening behind the scenes, Anne already knew that Camilla's presence would create chaos. And she was right. The tension between Anne and Camilla was undeniable, even before Charles married her. Anne, who always valued tradition and duty above personal feelings, couldn't understand why Charles was so drawn to Camilla. She saw Camilla as someone who didn't respect the rules, someone who put her desires above what was expected of her. To Anne, that was unacceptable. When Diana passed away and Charles eventually married Camilla, Anne kept her distance. She never openly spoke against Camilla, but those who observed the royal family could see the coldness in their interactions. While other members of the family tried to adjust to the change, Anne remained firm in her beliefs. She had never approved of Camilla's role in Charles's life, and she certainly didn't approve of her becoming queen consort. For years, Anne quietly opposed the idea of Camilla holding such a high title. She believed that a queen consort should represent loyalty, tradition, and dignity, qualities she felt Camilla had never shown. Even though Charles was determined to make Camilla a key figure in the monarchy, Anne never gave her full support. Time passed, and Camilla's position in the royal family became more secure. But did Anne ever truly accept her? Some say she eventually let go of her resentment, while others believe she still holds a quiet grudge. She may never publicly admit how she feels, but one thing is certain, her relationship with Camilla was never warm. But now, at 73, Princess Anne has revealed the one person she despised more than all the rest. For years, people have wondered who Princess Anne disliked the most. She has clashed with many, including Diana, Meghan, Fergie, and Camilla, but none of them were the person she resented above all others. Now, at 73, in private conversations, Anne has finally admitted the truth. Her deepest resentment wasn't toward one individual's personality or behavior. It was toward someone who, in her eyes, disrespected the monarchy in a way no one else had before. Anne has always believed that being royal is not about personal desires, it's about duty. While others in the family have treated their positions like a privilege, Anne has always treated it like a job. That's why her greatest resentment was reserved for someone who, in her mind, had done the most damage to the monarchy's reputation. Someone who had turned royal life into a spectacle and put personal interests ahead of responsibility. It wasn't Diana, despite their well-known differences. It wasn't Camilla, even though Anne never truly approved of her. It wasn't even Meghan, though Anne saw through her from the start. The person Anne resented the most was Prince Andrew, her own younger brother. Of all the scandals to shake the royal family, Andrew's was the most disgraceful in Anne's eyes. His ties to controversial figures, his legal battles, and the accusations against him were more than just personal mistakes. They were a stain on the monarchy itself. Unlike other royals who had caused drama through divorces or public feuds, Andrew had brought a level of disgrace that could not be ignored, and Anne, who had spent her life upholding the family's honor, could not forgive him for it. When the scandal broke, Anne made her feelings clear, not through words, but through actions. While the Queen struggled with how to handle Andrew's situation, Anne had already decided where she stood. She distanced herself, refused to be associated with his downfall, and made no attempt to defend him. To her, there was no excuse for what he had done. Anne's cold stance on Andrew wasn't just personal, it helped shape the royal family's modern image. While other family members tried to minimize the damage, Anne's approach was firm. The monarchy must protect itself, no matter the cost. Her refusal to show sympathy toward Andrew sent a strong message. Even among royals, actions had consequences. But did Anne ever make peace with it? Did she ever soften her view of her brother? Those close to her say no. Unlike the tensions she had with Diana, Meghan, or Camilla, disagreements that were based on personality or beliefs, Anne's feelings toward Andrew were rooted in something deeper. To her, his actions weren't just mistakes, they were betrayals of everything the monarchy stood for. And that, in her mind, was unforgivable. At 73, Anne's voice still carries weight. She has never been one to forget, never been one to back down. And now, after all these years, her true feelings? They've only just been revealed. If you love uncovering royal secrets and hidden truths, subscribe to Golden Age Phantom for more bold and captivating stories.